Hello and welcome to Horror 101 Second Semester. I'm Paul,
And I'm Dave.
and this week we're discussing The Monster Squad, which might not technically be a horror movie, but I feel like it fits the Halloween vibe.
Well, it has the star-studded cast of Count Dracula, a mummy, the Frankenstein, the monster from the Black Lagoon, a werewolf, just about every single horror monster that you can kind of idolize with the time. And any person that'd like to argue against it, you have all this to face up against.
Yes, so The Monster Squad from 1987. It's, like I said, maybe not a horror movie, but it's a Halloween movie.
Hmm.
It is written by Shane Black and Fred Decker and directed by Fred Decker. Shane Black, you would know for having done like the Lethal Weapon movies and a whole bunch of other stuff. He did Iron Man 3, I think. He did one of the Iron
Hmm.
Man movies, and he's done a bunch of other stuff. He has that Shane Black style, I guess.
Hmm.
Fred Decker, probably most well known for this movie, as well as a movie called House from 1985, which don't blame him for House 2 because he didn't make that. Oh, sorry, he was just a writer on that, and he directed Robocop 3, which again, probably not his fault.
Man.
Anyway, let us get into the top. Let's go with the top 10 singles of 1987. So at number one is Walk Like an Egyptian by the Bangles,
Yeah.
Alone by Heart,
Hmm.
Shake You Down by Gregory Abbott,
Hmm.
I Want to Dance with Somebody Who Loves Me by Whitney Houston,
Yeah.
Nothing's Gonna Stop Us Now by Starship,
Hmm.
C'est La Vie by Robbie Neville,
Hmm.
Here I Go Again by Whitesnake,
Ah, yes.
The Way It Is by Bruce Hornsby and The Range,
Hmm.
Shakedown by Bob Seger, and finally at number 10, Living on a Prayer by Bon Jovi.
Yeah. Yeah.
Top 10 movies this year. Oh my god, is this a banger of a year, Dave?
Well, somewhat understandable, because a marvelous case that even within this time, there were always movies from the 80s or whatnot that were still kind of around when you're growing up and you saw with your parents and whatnot from there.
Yes, so at number 1 this year is Beverly Hills Cop 2.
Ah, yes.
Number 2 is Platoon.
Ah, yes.
Number 3, Fatal Attraction.
Hmm.
Number 4, The Untouchables.
Hmm.
Number 5, Three Men and a Baby.
Oh, yes, of course.
At number 6, The Secret of My Success.
Hmm.
At number 7, Stakeout.
Hmm.
At number 8, Lethal Weapon.
Oh, of course.
At number 9, The Witches of Eastwick.
Hmm.
And finally, at number 10, probably, in my opinion, well, maybe the third best movie this year, Predator.
Ah, yes. With all the particular things from there.
I love Predator. Although I don't think it's better than The Untouchables or Lethal Weapon or maybe Beverly Hills Cop 2. But
Hmm.
and finally, video games for this year. This was a hell of a year. Oh my god. I'm just gonna go with the stuff that was introduced outside of Japan. I'm not gonna bring up everything that was released in Japan because we would be here for fucking ever.
Nah, yeah.
So just outside of Japan, we got Afterburner, Contra, Double Dragon, Final
Hmm.
Fantasy, Mega Man, Metal Gear, Operation Wolf, Phantasy Star, Shinobi, Street Fighter, The Last Ninja, and The Legend of Zelda.
Yeah. All of the fancy things.
That is a hell of a list. Like, my god, that's fantastic stuff.
Hmm.
Alrighty, so let us get into the movie. Alrighty. The Monster Squad is a club of preteens who idolize the classic Universal monster movies and their non human stars. Club leader Sean, whose younger sister Phoebe desperately wants to join the club, is given the diary of a legendary monster hunter, Dr. Abraham Van Helsing, but his excitement is diminished when he finds out it is written in German. Sean and the rest of the Monster Squad, his best friend and second in command Patrick, Clumsy Horace, tough older kid Rudy, and little Eugene, go to visit an elderly man known as the Scary German Guy. Actually, a kind gentleman and former concentration camp prisoner to translate the diary. I do love how that's handled because they don't harp on it. They just kind of show the tattoo and he says, like, he knows something about monsters.
Yes.
It's handled very subtly, and I really liked how that was handled. The diary describes an amulet that is composed of concentrated good. One day out of every century, as the forces of good and evil reach a balance, the otherwise indestructible amulet becomes vulnerable. With the next day of balance happening within a few days at the stroke of midnight, the children realize they must gain possession of the amulet and use it with an incantation from Van Helsing's diary to open a wormhole in the universe and cast the monsters into limbo, as shown in the film's prelude. Van Helsing had unsuccessfully attempted this 100 years ago to defeat his old adversary, Count Dracula. His apprentices then emigrated to the United States to hide the amulet out of Dracula's reach. Nevertheless, Dracula seeks to obtain the amulet so he can take over the world. To this end, he assembles several monsters' allies: the Mummy, the Gill Man, the Wolfman, and three schoolgirls whom the Count transforms into his vampiric consorts. Dracula then steals a crate containing Frankenstein's monster from a B-52 Mitchell in flight, thus completing his army. However, Frankenstein's monster is reluctant to aid Dracula and wanders into the forest where he encounters Phoebe. Rather than being afraid, she shows him the kindness he has always sought, and they become friends. After Phoebe proves to the Monster Squad that Frankenstein's monster is not evil, he chooses to help the boys instead of Dracula. The amulet is buried in a stone room beneath a house that Dracula and the other monsters now occupy, and where Van Helsing's diary was found. The room is littered with wards which prevent the monsters from taking it. The Monster Squad break into the house, acquire the amulet, and narrowly escape Dracula's grasp. They confer with Scary German Guy, who informs them the incantation must be read by a female virgin. In revenge for their meddling, Count Dracula destroys the squad's clubhouse, thereby drawing police detective Del Crenshaw, Sean and Phoebe's father, into the fray. As midnight approaches, the squad makes their way to the local cathedral to make their last stand. The doors of the cathedral are locked, so the incantation must be read on the stoop, leaving the squad vulnerable. They enlist Patrick's elder sister Lisa to help them, as she is the only female virgin they know. But the incantation fails since Lisa is actually not a virgin anymore. As the monsters close in, the squad decides that Phoebe must complete the task of opening the portal, and Scary German Guy attempts to read her the incantation, while the squad and Detective Crenshaw fend off the monsters. In the ensuing battle, Dracula's consorts, the Mummy, the Killman, and the Wolfman are defeated. Dracula arrives to destroy the amulet when Frankenstein's monster intervenes, impaling him on a wrought iron cross. Phoebe finishes the incantation, opening the portal which begins to consume the bodies of the monsters. Dracula, still alive, attempts to drag Sean in with him, but Sean impales Dracula with a wooden stake, and Crenshaw grabs Sean before he gets pulled in with Dracula. Having briefly escaped from limbo, Van Helsing appears and pulls Dracula to his doom, also giving a thumbs up to Sean. As Frankenstein's monster is drawn into the portal, Phoebe holds on to him and pleads for him to stay. Knowing that he does not belong on Earth, Frankenstein's monster lets go of Phoebe's hand, but accepts her gift of a stuffed animal to remember her by. The portal then closes, ensuring the world's safety. The United States Army arrives on the scene, having received a letter from Eugene earlier asking for their help against the monsters. When the confused general fails to make sense of the situation, Sean steps forward and presents the man with his business card, identifying identifying himself and his friends as the Monster Squad. So what did we think of this film, Dave?
Well, on the one hand, it was interesting enough for the concept, just the fact that it makes perfect sense for around the time that someone would make a movie like this, that kids would absolutely completely enjoy seeing something like this. And just nostalgia of seeing these sort of particular movies from the 80s and whatnot from my past, but also the case of, oh God, this was a 80s movie with its isms and whatnot that it has with it, the musical, um, the words on the tip of my tongue, montage section of getting things prepared under a cheesy 80s song that was going on, and then 80 ending with the cheesy 80s song with the monster song or Monster Squad's premise of the entire movie. You just,
In a rap.
oh my
Oh my
gosh.
god, I love that so much, Dave.
There was just that little bit of me that was just cringing all the time on the floor, just like, oh my God, I can't take it. Just me looking at my side. It's like, oh, calm it down. It's funny.
Yeah, I really enjoy this movie. I think it's a really good Halloween film. Like I said, it's not really a horror movie. It's more of like a comedy, but it's a lot of fun. It's just a fun movie.
It really is. Just with the ideas of it, there's still enough stakes, but not enough to really push the concerns or other sorts of things that happen within it. Like I think at the very most, man, the Wolfman is resilient with the particular things that he does, such as getting blown up with a stick of dynamite.
Yeah, he gets shot a bunch of times and gets blown up by a stick of dynamite and just keeps coming back.
Uh,
Yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. I'm so shocked that it never got a sequel. We'll get into why, but it sets itself up so perfectly for a sequel.
well, I could somewhat see it, but then it also is a bit of the case of how to supposedly go about it, or it would most likely be the case of everything from the first movie is reversed, so the second movie can kind of have something to go off of.
I mean, I feel like you could find other movie monsters um, that you could use. Maybe like the issue with that becomes like obviously like copyright and stuff, but I'm like, I mean, so also you don't have to do like real movie monsters. Like you could do like the Monster Squad versus a Jason knockoff or something. I don't know. I just feel like it sets itself up for a sequel, and we never got a sequel.
Mm.
And I mean, the reason we never got a sequel is this movie cost about 14 million to make and only made 3.8 at the box office.
On the one hand, damn, but on the additional hand, damn, like going that far with it. And even with the specific effects and whatnot that I see with the movie, like, was it just a case of who they supposedly hired for it? Was there just issues that kind of came up with it? Like, wow, that's supposed much. Eh, maybe for the time, but yeah, it still leaves me kind of wondering.
So I think the biggest issue with this was um, it's kind of in an awkward position
Mm,
in that it's coming out in 1987, and if we look at like the box office for 1987, like it's up against a ton of great films, and it's a hard movie to market
mm,
because you kind of can't take really young kids to it,
mm,
because like it's gonna be too scary and too bloody for like an 8-year old.
mm,
But like the kids who are like 13, 14, who they're probably trying to get, are probably going to be more interested in going to see like Predator, or like Nightmare 3 comes out this year. There's a bunch of other like really good horror movies. So it's kind of
mm,
like this is a hard one to market because it's not Nightmare 3, but it's also not really for kids. It's this weird
mm.
kind of middle ground that I think made it difficult. And also, I know it's 1987, and like today, if you looked at these special effects, that you'd be like, some of them look kind of lame. But I love how the effects look in this movie.
No, I can understand with it, especially with what they kind of had to work with at the time. It definitely works fairly well, and yeah, even nowadays, that this stuff had to start it before anything we have nowadays could get any further.
Yeah, and I love like Stan Winston does the monster designs and a lot of the effects for this, and I just love his monster designs in this movie. Like they're so good.
Yeah,
Like
it's definitely true.
he's clearly taking inspiration from like the Universal classic stuff, but he's also
Mm.
putting his own twist on it, and I'm like, yeah, that looks great.
Hmm.
And just like a lot of the special effects that they do, I'm like, I love this like kind of like 80s practical effects aesthetic. Like that's very much something I enjoy.
Hmm. No, I can definitely agree with definite little bits that were sort of in there with that. Again, it gave warm fuzzies and whatnot just for seeing this sort of traditional Halloween sort of film that within my own mind sort of sits on the traditional simpler kind of Halloween stuff, but still kind of a case of, yeah, I'm not sure if I'd be able to show this to my nephews.
Yeah, see, that's I think why the film didn't do super well. Is it's like I would like I would understand you going like I would want to, but they're still a little young for it.
That and also the case of it's the 80s and the language.
Yeah, there's a couple of homophobic slurs in this one that come up, which
Yeah,
isn't cool.
yeah, yeah. Just a whole lot of things that it was all right at the time, but now it's just not going to fly.
So it wasn't all right at the time. It was socially acceptable at the time. It was never
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
get what you're saying. But yeah, it's one of those things where I'm like, oh, I heard that like in the first 2 minutes, and I'm like, oh god, I forgot about that part.
No, it was kind of a marvelous case of seeing this one in the past, and when first learning about this particular movie was from the couple little catch lines that most people relate this movie to.
Yeah, the movie has a bunch of really great dialogue, and that's Shane Black working his magic because he's such a good writer. So yeah, I take it you enjoyed this.
Yeah, it was very fun. There was the one little side of me that was just cringing with all the 80isms and little other particular things, but on the whole, it was a fun experience going through.
Very good. Well, next week won't be quite as fun.
In the typical sense, or should I be more concerned?
Well, it's still. I don't even know if that's entirely true, because I think you're going to enjoy the film, but it's not going to be as much of a comedy.
Well, supposedly for the best with how this season kind of is. It's understandable, but also kind of the case of, God, it's an oxymoron with the phrase.
So, next week, I've decided to change things up a little, and next week we're going to be discussing Late Night with the Devil.
Interesting.
Yes. So, if you're not familiar with the premise, Dave, it's very simple. It's basically meant to be like a found footage kind of documentary that follows the events of a late night talk show episode that aired on Halloween night of 1977, during which the host attempts to boost ratings by inviting on an allegedly possessed girl.
Mm.
And it's very good. I
Very much the spoops in that typical film style.
it okay, so it's got some spoops, but it also has this very the setup is a lot of fun, and I think you're going to enjoy this.
Alrighties.
So until next time, I'm Paul.
And I'm Dave.